Everybody's got a right to live. Everybody's got a right to love. Everybody's got a right to dream. Everybody's got a right to learn. Everybody's got a right to live. Everybody's got a right to. Everybody's got a right to live. Everybody's got a right to live. And before this campaign fails, we'll all go down to jail. Everybody's got a right to live. Everybody's got a right to live. Everybody's got a right to live. And before this campaign fails, we'll all go down to jail. Everybody's got a right to live. Everybody's got a right to live. Everybody's got a right to live. Woo! Yeah! Yeah,
English on your Zoom?
yeah, I did.
Okay.
Welcome to Moral Mondays. Can you hear me?
Yes.
It's so powerful to be here with everyone as we take action together, as we raise these issues, and as we make our demands loud and clear. My name is Reverend Dr. Liz Theo Harris. I'm the co-chair of the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival. And I'm also the director of the Cairo Center for Religions, Rights, and Social Justice. Today is our final Moral Mondays in these first 100 days of the Biden and Harris administration, where we've been coming forward with our 14 policy priorities to heal the nation. We've gathered over the past weeks hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people online. We've demanded that we have to raise the minimum wage, that we have to have a just COVID relief package, or packages, in fact. We've gathered to promote voting rights and call for an end to the filibuster. We've cried out that we must update the poverty measure. We've been in West Virginia with poor and low-income people there. We've been in Alabama with Bessemer Amazon workers. We've been in Washington, D.C., making some holy trouble. We have had Poor People's Campaign leaders in dozens of states delivering these priorities to our state capitals. Last week, we were in Mississippi, announcing our online mass Poor People's Assembly, Low Workers Assembly, and Moral March on Washington, which will be June 21st, 2021, and an in-person Moral March on Washington in 2022. And today, as we approach May Day, International Labor Day, we're gathered here to rise up for immigration justice. We know that the 5 evils, the interlocking injustices that this campaign takes up, come together in immigration justice. We need to end systemic racism. The xenophobic and racist attacks on Asians and Pacific Islanders, on Africans, on those of Middle Eastern descent, on Latin Americans, and on all of our immigrant brothers and sisters. We must end poverty, the high levels of poverty, the low wages of immigrant workers and families. We must save the earth and everything living in and on it. We know that the role of climate change impacts migration. It pollutes the air and the land and the water that we and our children breathe and drink and bathe in. And we have to stand against militarism, the militarization of our communities, the U.S.-Mexico border, the role that the United States plays as a purveyor of violence across the world. And we must challenge strongly this distorted narrative. This narrative that blames poor people, that blames immigrants for all of society's problems, that pits us against each other and feeds us the lie that this is as good as it gets, that we have scarcity, when instead we're living in a world of abundance. Thank you for joining us today. And as we get our program started, we have some powerful speakers. We're going to welcome the Reverend Dr. William Barber, the co-chair of the Poor People's Campaign, through a powerful video montage. And then after that video, the next voice you'll hear is from our sister Kenya Alcocer. She has recently become one of the tri-chairs of the steering committee of the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival. She's a founding member of this campaign, a key leader that's helping us raise our voices for justice everywhere. And so we'll watch this video, we'll hear from Kenya, and then we have a powerful list of speakers with us today, rising up for immigration justice, human rights, and for dignity for every human being.
Oye, mi gente, traemos la fuerza. Oye, mi gente, traemos la fuerza. La libertad es mi única bandera. La libertad es mi. Come on and stand up with us. Oye, mi gente, traemos la fuerza. Oye, mi gente, traemos la fuerza. La libertad es mi única bandera. Rise up, my people, my condors, my eagles. Come on, let me hear you. No human being will ever be illegal. That's it.
Why though? Because we've never faced the lies and the mythologies that have been used to undergird these policies so people get away with them as though they're benign, as though they're not really race. Like the lies that are told on immigrants. Immigrants take from our society. Well, in reality, a report by the National Academy of Science and Engineering and Medicine found that immigrants have little or no effect on wages and employment. In fact, because many of them are entrepreneurs, they actually build the economy. The lie, the racist lie that undocumented immigrants don't pay taxes. Undocumented immigrants pay an average of $11.64 billion in taxes every year. They also pay to help sustain the Social Security Trust Fund. In 2010, undocumented individuals paid $13 billion. And the people we stole their border from them, they paid $13 billion into retirement accounts and only received $1 billion in return. And they've contributed up to $300 billion to the Social Security Trust Fund. And without it, the rest of us may never get our Social Security. Studies have confirmed they're rapists, they're murderers. No. Studies confirm that immigrants are less likely to commit crimes than native-born Americans. And how dare some of the folk who are operating today in the same philosophy of past segregationists and slaveholders call anybody violent.
Rise up, my people, my condors, my eagles.
What we had experienced at the border, it is the convergence of evil systems that are national systems. They are not only at the border, but at the border they became magnified. Weapons of war in our streets, white supremacy, and a rhetoric, a hateful rhetoric of white supremacy that is telling that Latinos and immigrants and children are the enemy.
Rise up, my people, my condors, my eagles. illegal. Now watch this. I want you to pump your fist. Come on. No human being will ever be illegal. Come on backstage. I see you. Come on. No human being will ever be illegal.
The lives of these dear sisters and these two men, their deaths say something to us. Their deaths say that all of us must come together. Their deaths say we can't let white supremacy or racism have the final say. Their death says that we can't allow immigrant hatred and Muslim hatred to have the last say. It's time to get it right here and right now. No racist superiority is ever greater than the rights of humanity.
No human being will ever be illegal.
Hello, my name is Kenia Alcocer. I am one of the tri-chairs of the National Steering Committee for the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival, coordinating member of the California Poor People's Campaign, and organizer with Unión de Vecinos. Today, we are here to talk about immigration, but also acknowledging that our liberation as immigrants is tied to the poor of this nation and to the poor of the world. That is the reason why today we are hearing from a lot of people from across the country talking about their stories, and we're happy to be here to talk about how, as undocumented communities, we're bettering our communities and pushing for a better world for everybody.
Thank you so much, Kenya, and it's powerful to be here with you today and with everyone. I am so excited to introduce some of our speakers who have come together to show some of the different issues that are taking place in our communities, and then the demands that we in the Poor People's Campaign and our organizations are taking up as we demand justice for absolutely everyone and human rights. So it's my honor to introduce Guadalupe de la Cruz from the AFSC of and also in Florida with the Florida Poor People's Campaign. Guadalupe, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Liz, and hello, everyone. Thank you for being with us today. It's so exciting to be sharing space with such powerful throughout and coming together to really uplift the voices of our communities and really draw really give the light onto the reality that a lot of our families are facing during this time, and not just now, but even beforehand. So recognizing that our broken immigration system has continued to fail our undocumented communities. It has continued to separate, detain, and deport our friends and families. Throughout the years, we have seen an increase of amount of policy and implementations that have caused so much trauma. And Homestead has been such a big target of this for years. We have forgotten the humanity behind the label of immigrant. I have seen this administration and previous ones continue to criminalize and attack my community. And for years, we have seen my hometown and the state of Florida become such an anti-sanctuary with the passage of SB 168 and very much an open anti-immigrant place, especially when police and ICE collaborate and they make for set up checkpoints where traffic violations or an infraction can easily become a deportation, where farm workers face hunger and exposure to harsh working conditions with little to no protections. And on top of all of those attacks, we have been fighting for years against influx centers and private detention centers that are opened and run for profit on the hardship of people fleeing violence and poverty in their home countries. In my backyard, the Homestead Detention Center was open. It was the largest for-profit child detention center, and we face not just the moral issues of detention, but the effects and realities of our broken immigration system. Then, to add, we have been subject to the environmental racism that exists by having this detention center open. Homestead Detention Center was the largest, again, for-profit influx facility that the government decided to open, knowing that there was a Superfund site on and near the location. The decision to reopen this facility has failed to look at the environmental and toxic exposure that children were faced while housed there. And again, they will be exposed should they be detained here if it reopens. We see such a trend from our government to hold and detain children in and on toxic lands. The Homestead Detention Center, located within a Superfund site with at least 60 known sources of contaminations within 2/3 of a mile of the shelter, was an area that our government deemed adequate to hold and detain children. Our major concerns are that there have been no efforts from our government to meet the demands of real comprehensive testing. All conversation has been reopening it and zero about the trauma or toxic exposure that children there faced. So when me and my community advocate for the closure of this camp, we don't just mean close Homestead. We mean close all and end child detention centers throughout the US. We demand that the few benefits that exist for our undocumented migrant communities be respected. We say no to HB1 that attacks our right to protest against these injustices. And we mean fix our immigration system. We mean stop policies like Title 42 that reject the human right for asylum. And we mean recognize how foreign and US policy affects our borders here and across the world. We mean give my community the respect and dignity that they so well deserve, especially under a pandemic. Don't give us a title of essential and then treat us as we are expendable. Respect our farm workers and do all that is possible to give them an access to a quality and dignified life. So thank you again for joining us as we come together and speak on the realities that our immigrant and undocumented communities are facing, not just now, but have been facing for years. So thank you so much, Liz, for having me here.
Thank you so much, Lupe. It's powerful to hear this, and I hope that people heard it. We have for-profit detention centers. We have kids being polluted on Superfund sites and detained there. We have unjust immigration policies amidst poverty and violence in this country and all across the world, and it doesn't have to be this way. So thank you so much for the work you're doing, Lupe, and we indeed in the Poor People's Campaign are in solidarity with that struggle, and will continue to raise it. The next person I want to introduce is Ana Hernandez from Unión de Vecinos in Los Angeles and with the Los Angeles Tenants Union. Ana, welcome. Bienvenidos.
Good morning, everyone. I am Ana Hernandez. I live in public housing. I'd like to thank you all, and I'd like to thank Kenya for supporting us and for the space you are providing us with so as to be able to share what is happening in our communities. I am Ana Hernandez. I am a founding member of the Los Angeles Tenants Union and Unión de Vecinos. I am from Mexico City. I have lived in public housing since 1996, and we are fighting so as to have decent living standards in our public housing. Our work has entailed fighting for housing because there are no other alternatives. For us, from an economic point of view, we do not have a good economic position in the country. Our jobs provide us with income that does not allow us to move forward. We have needs that need to be met. We at the Unión de Vecinos, we have been fighting against everything that has been happening in our communities. And as organizers, we are educating the residents, explaining to them that we do have rights and that our rights go beyond the most basic needs. So it is very important for migrants in public housing to be aware of this. We have suffered attacks, many different types of attacks. We have also been displaced, whether because sometimes some people cannot pay their rent, exactly what we are seeing today with regards to the pandemic. There has been eviction of tenants, for example. What we have been doing is organize the community. This is very important because we need public housing. We cannot pay for a different kind of housing because market rents in our location, well, they say our local rents are much more economical than in other areas. But given that these are low income people, they do not have enough income so as to be able to afford those rents. There is no other choice. We need to live here. It is not that people do not want to live these places, because public housing has been criticized, because some people think that people living in public housing are people who do not want to build a future for themselves, people that do not have dreams, people that do not wish to become fulfilled. But that is not reality. People have to live in public housing because they have no other choice, and people need to be aware of what the real situation is. I'd like to thank you for inviting me to join you today. We are fighting to preserve public housing. What is happening is that public housing is falling. They are trying to take public housing away from us. But this is the only way in which we can pay a fairer rent. If you have public housing, you pay 30% of your income. As your income improves, and also as the income of a family improves, your rent goes up. It is not as if we were living here for free. But each year, this rent has been increased. There is a 3% increase every year, and there are other rules for people who improve their income. There is a flat rent or a maximum rent for some people, and people have been affected to a very large extent, especially in the case of mixed families. They are families where 2 or 3 members of the family do not have legal status. So these families are the ones that are affected the most.
So what we do is we fight so that these families are not kicked out because they will not be able to pay for the rent any other way in any other place. During the pandemic, we've seen that all tenants are actually suffering. We have to choose whether we eat or whether we pay rent. And that is why in April 2020, we launched a campaign. The campaign basically said, do we pay rent or do we prefer to eat? Immigrants are targets. We're an easy target for the federal government and for the private landlords rather. It is the same thing that I was saying before. When you pay rent outside public housing, it's really not easy. That's why we have to organize ourselves and fight for all the poor people, not only for public housing, but all the basic needs: food, justice, environmental justice, public health insurance. regardless of our immigration status, we all have the right to live in dignity. Thank you.
Thank you. That's right. That's right, indeed. We do all have the right to live in dignity, and thank you so much for explaining both the plight that's going on in Los Angeles with tenants, as well as the fight that you all are waging. I want to remind people to keep on pushing this broadcast out. Make sure you share it with 5, 10, 100 of your friends, and make sure that we're coming here and rising together in power, making our voices heard on this Moral Monday. The next person I want to introduce, and then I'm going to pass it over to Kenya to introduce the next couple of speakers, is Aman Salah from the Yemeni Liberation Movement. Thank you so much for being with us, Iman.
Thank you for having me.
Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on, the struggle that you're engaged in, and the hunger strike, indeed, that folks have been waging?
Yeah, so we just ended our hunger strike about a few days ago. We were in Washington, D.C. to demand an end to all U.S. support to the Saudi-led blockade that's on Yemen. And so for those who might not know what's going on, Yemen has those things. And so as of December, there was a fuel blockade that has been implemented on Yemen. And this has caused mass famine. So there's a man-made famine in Yemen with over 16 million people being starved right now. And every 75 seconds, a child dies of starvation. And so all this is because with no fuel being able to enter into the country, there's no way of transporting food and goods and medical necessity into the country. And so we've seen like a huge influx of children and malnutrition people coming into the hospitals. But like I think about 51% of hospitals are unable to operate because there's no fuel to run their generators. So it's a really sick situation that's happening in Yemen right now. And me, as well as other people within the Yemeni Liberation Movement, decided to go on hunger strike as our last resort to bring awareness and demand an end for the blockade.
Well, thank you for sharing about that, and also for your commitment to protecting and standing for the rights of everyone, including everyone in Yemen. Any final words or charge that you have, and then I'm going to pass it off to Kenya.
Sure, yeah. So we were doing this hunger strike. We've raised an enormous amount of support and awareness, but we're not done. This war is still going on. And for those who want to understand about what we're doing and what's happening in Yemen, we encourage everybody to follow our Instagram and our Twitter and our Facebook at Yemeni Liberation Movement. So that's YEMENI Liberation Movement. This is a genocide that's been playing out each and every day. And these world leaders have been complicit and silent while this is happening. And so it's really up to us to bring more attention and awareness on this issue. But thank you for having me too.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that there's this strong connection between the poor, not just here in the United States, but we need, as immigrants, we have a connection to the poor in our countries that are also fighting for their liberation. And now we're going to have Catalina Ordono Castillo from Movimiento Cosecha.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. As Kenya said, my name is Catalina Adorno. I am originally from Mexico. I was born in Mexico, and I migrated to the US 20 years ago. And since then, I have been living in this country as an undocumented immigrant. I am also a member of Movimiento Cosecha, a movement of immigrant workers and families fighting for respect, dignity, and permanent protection for the immigrant community. Our fight for permanent protection is a fight for legalization. A lot of us who have had to leave our countries due to violence, due to poverty, due to destabilization of our regions, a large part by American governments, and had to leave our home countries to come to the US. Once here, we've encountered nothing but persecution at the hands of the police, of ICE, and anti-immigrant forces. And that has to stop. We need to feel safe, and actually we deserve to feel safe in our own communities. We shouldn't be afraid of leaving our homes to go to work or to school or to even buy groceries, thinking that ICE might pick us up on the way outside, not knowing if we can return home or not. That should not be a fear that we should have. And that is why we are fighting, we have been fighting, and we're gonna be continuing to fighting for legalization for everyone so that we can feel safe in our own communities. We also know that as immigrants, our legal status is not the only thing that impacts our lives, that we're also impacted by the lack of education for our families, for our children, for our siblings, by the lack of housing, by the lack of healthcare, as we saw under this pandemic. Immigrants were also these quote unquote essential workers that were praised, but also forgotten because we never received any sort of COVID relief because we didn't have a legal status. We don't have a 9-digit number that says that we're allowed to be in this country. And so we'll continue to fight for all the needs of the immigrant community, knowing, of course, too, that we also can't keep losing our people to detention and deportation. And that's why we're fighting for legalization, or what we call permanent protection for all of us. In the past, we have looked to political parties, to the Democrats, for a way to get some sort of policy to try to fix our status in this country. But so far we're here again without a legal status after the pandemic, continuing to fight for legalization. And even though this past January, there was an inauguration for a Democratic president, and the Democratic Party has taken control of Congress, we are already hearing the Democratic Party say that it will be too difficult to pass something for the 11 million undocumented immigrants. And that is why we, as Cosecha, say that we can't rely on either party, right? One, the Republican who deports us and has made it very clear that they don't want us here, but also that we cannot rely on the Democrats who make promises to us, but actually never fulfill them. And that is why this Saturday, May 1st, Cosecha will be mobilizing in Washington, D.C. to continue demanding permanent protection for all, saying that we are not going to stop fighting until all the 11 million undocumented immigrants in this country have a legalization, have a legal status. So we also want to invite everyone who's here and who's watching to join us in Washington, D.C. on May 1st. Thank you.
That is amazing. Yes, for those that are nearby, please go and join this wonderful march. I'm here in California, so it's going to be a little bit tougher. But yeah, it will be amazing to have thousands and millions of folks out on the streets and demanding the right to have a life with dignity, which documents don't necessarily give you that, but allow you to have at least some peace of mind. And next, we are going to have Brenda Castro from Movimiento Cosecha.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for your invitation, for providing me the opportunity to share my testimony. My name is Brenda Castro. I'm from Honduras. I migrated to this country 18 years ago. I got involved in social movements around 13 years ago, and I've been working with Cosecha for a little bit more than 2 years, organizing. We as a community, as a migrant community with illegal or undocumented immigrants. Most people think that undocumented immigrants are only from Latin America, but we have also immigrants from other countries, undocumented, that live like us in the shadows, that live in fear, in terror, in fact, that are harassed. As a proof, you can see what is happening with the Asian community. They're being harassed, they're being hit. It's kind of a cycle. First Latin Americans, then Asians, and then we will have another community or ethnic group that will continue to be harassed, attacked, mistreated, walked over. And in Cosecha, we are organizing for permanent protection for the more than 11 million undocumented migrants that live in this country. In Michigan, where I live, we are fighting to get driver's licenses for undocumented people. Unfortunately, like my colleague said, sometimes we get stopped by the police, and just because of a traffic fine, we are deported to our respective countries. We are criminalized and punished twice. First, we're criminalized, and then we're deported, we're detained, and that is what we're fighting against. What we want is to empower our communities. Minority communities, LGBTQ, poor white people, Asians, Latin Americans, all those are being mistreated, neglected. And this happened even more so during the pandemic. We were identified as essential workers, and now that the economy is going back to normal, they want to get rid of us. And that is not fair for anyone. Because during the pandemic, it was our communities that were in the fields, harvesting the crops, in the supermarkets, working, selling food, on the streets, trying to maintain the economy of this country. That, as Kat said, that is why we are mobilizing. And we're not only mobilizing Latin Americans, we are mobilizing all minorities to go out on the streets and raise our voices. This is the time. This is the time. If we continue to keep our head down, if we remain silent, they will continue to walk over us. If we continue to stand this, there is an expression in my country saying that a live person only can bear with what a silly person accepts. So those are neglected. Those are in the shadows. We need to raise our voices. We will not get any help from Republicans or Democrats. We need equality. We need dignity. We need white poor people to also have dignity. We need African Americans to not be killed. We need Latin Americans to not be criminalized and deported. We need LGBTQ people to not be humiliated and mistreated. That's our fight. That's what we want. We want a unity of different communities to come out on the streets, to fight together, to raise our voices jointly, because politicians will not give us anything. Our work, our efforts, is all we have. They don't care about our children when we're deported. They don't care about African Americans when one of them is killed. They don't care about a person from the LGBTQ community who's killed. They don't care about anything. They only care about money. Capitalists only care about their money, money, and the rest of us are just the steps on their stairs to continue to make money. So everyone who's here with us today, I would like to invite every single one of you to join me in this fight. This is not a fight of Coseta only, of undocumented immigrants. This fight is for every single community that is being mistreated, humiliated, and in the shadows. We are more than 11 million people. They can't continue to neglect us, to hide us. They cannot sweep us under the rug. They cannot do that anymore with us. This is a time to come out, to demand, because something else, we need to teach our communities that if you're undocumented, that doesn't mean you don't have the right to fight for your dignity. You have to raise your voice and you have to make demands. You need to make sure that you're not walked over, and the only person that can do it is you that are here following us right now. You have the power. People have the power. If we come together, if we empower ourselves, not only if we got on the street, not only on the 1st of May, but every type of march organized by any organization, you will see where they will see where power is. They will have to listen to us. Thank you so much for this time and for this opportunity.
Thank you so much. Thank you indeed. The power rests. That power lies in the people. The power of 11 million undocumented people, the power of 140 million poor and low-income people, the power of people coming together across all the lines that are trying to divide us. So the next speaker I have the privilege of introducing is Christine Lewis. Christine with the Domestic Workers United here in New York City. Christine, welcome to Moral Mondays.
Thanks, Liz. Thanks to the Poor People's Campaign. Thanks to everybody who's standing here in solidarity with this cause, who's down for this cause. It's important. Before I start, let me just say this. Freedom is constant struggle. Yes? Freedom is constant struggle. And we will not rest until it comes. Yes? So together, and I can't emphasize enough how much community is important. Community, 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 community. Will this circle be unbroken if we come together across racial lines, across every other line that seeks to divide us? Because hear what? It pays to be poor. Yes, it pays to be poor. Let me just say, we must put, instead of our fear, we must put our faith in front of our fear and go together. You know what? And toot our horns as we go around the walls of Jericho. What is the walls of Jericho? The walls of Jericho are the things that hinder us. Yes, the immigration status, the political climate that we're in, the pandemic, Black Lives Matter. We have the pandemic of Black Lives Matter, the economy, yes, and COVID-19. We have 3 pandemics. And who's affected by these 3 pandemics? Those are the lower tier, right? We who are the workers, the mighty, mighty workers. So let me just say this. My name is Christine Lewis, and I am the Secretary, Cultural Outreach Coordinator with Domestic Workers United in New York City. Domestic workers fought for and won a Bill of Rights in 2010. We were the first state to get this Bill of Rights passed. Who are we, one would ask? We're primarily immigrant women of color, women who are standing on the front line for change. We got the Bill of Rights passed, but the Bill of Rights passage is not still enough. We're talking about a comprehensive immigration reform for those of us who are working in the shadows, those of us who are working as the invisible worker, but yet making this economy thrive. We talk about mass migration. We talk about migration. Who's migration for? From time immemorial, migration has been happening. Folks have been moving across borders to go and find economic opportunities for adventure, for play, for living. And then all of a sudden, there's a cap on immigration in this country, the richest country in the nation. And we understand why it is the way it is. We understand that it's for the rich and white. It's not for the brown and the black. We've seen the assassination of the brown and the black many years, time immemorial. We talk about the Asian fight right now, you know, for justice. And before that, it was the blacks who were lynched. The black men and women who worked in the kitchens, who we see today are still working in the kitchen. We see that the faces of the black and brown folks the black folks who are now the immigrant, who are working in the kitchens. Yes, so we organize for power, respect, a fair labor standard, and a movement about ending oppression and exploit for all. Right? The struggle begins with us right now. And why we organize, one would ask. We organize to end an era of exclusion from all social and labor legislations whose work is unprotected by union standards, such as the National Labor Relations Act, which excluded domestic workers and farm workers from organizing. And those were the two tiers of workers who made this economy move, the farm workers and domestic workers. The plight of the domestic worker is so much. She sleeps in slimy basements, right? She's lacked privacy in the homes that she works in, right? She even works without seeing her doctor, you know, being diagnosed with ailment and not being able to go to her doctor for fear of being replaced. Is that fair? The richest country in the world. She works 44 hours and overtime without getting paid. Right now, we're having a conversation with NMAS. NMAS is the National Mobilization Against Sweatshops for workers who work 24 hours and get paid for 12. Could you imagine working 24 hours, turning a patient, not being able to sleep, right? And the union does nothing as well, and turning this patient religiously and getting paid for only 13. That's why we have to come together. That's why the Poor People's Campaign is not about one person. The Poor People's Campaign is all about us. It's all about all of us who are working in the shadows. It's all about us who are trying to make it in, who are trying to provide for our families here, abroad, and even the families we work for, right? Could I say that Domestic Workers United, winning the historic Bill of Rights, has set a precedent for other states to go after their Bill of Rights. Domestic workers, Latin workers, they're Southeast Asian, they're African, and they're Caribbean. Primarily, again, immigrant women of color. Women who have to look outside their windows because their sons are getting shot on the corners of the streets. Women who when George Floyd called for his mama, called for us, women, least we forget. Yes, we talk about the workers building rights and solidarity, and how important it is to gel the immigrant rights for workers here and for workers abroad. Yes? So will the circle be unbroken? Will we continue to stand and make a stand? And because, listen, also because the funding revolution will not be televised, because we wait for handout money, we have to begin to do it for ourselves. And thanks to the fund excluded workers who was able to win $2.1 billion in New York State to give some reparation and stimulus money to undocumented workers. How big is that? Because domestic work, immigrant workers, as we know, who pay taxes as well, has been excluded from the stimulus package. So let us stand together and let us fight together. Will this circle be unbroken in the by and by? And as faith, members of faith, let us continue to stand. When all to do is to stand, let us continue to stand. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christine. Indeed, we have to continue to stand, and we will stand together and raise our voices together and organize. I have the great honor of introducing Lou Aya from the Peace Poets, who is always in the forefront of justice struggles and always here with the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival. Lou, thank you for being with us. We look forward to welcoming you to this Moral Monday.
Thanks so much, Reverend Liz. It's amazing to be with you all right now, to feel the power in each word of each speaker. I'm so grateful to each of y'all for sharing your truth. We are, I think, not quite in the forefront, but right behind all of these amazing leaders that we're listening today, and that's our purpose. And so tonight I'm really representing the powerful people, some of who you've already heard from Movimiento Cosecha. This is a song composed with a comrade named Beto, because it lifts up one of the most powerful things that people are saying right now. Movimiento Cosecha often says, papeles sí, migajas no. Papers, yes. Crumbs, no. And so this song simply says, our daily bread gives us joy. The bread of every day gives us joy. Papers, yes. Crumbs, no. And so it brings the power and the joy and the revolutionary spirit that Christine is just bringing to us right now. It's great to see you out here, sister. Much love and respect. That Catalina and Brenda are also bringing into this space. And so wherever you at right now, we hope that you go ahead and don't be shy, but you fill the space that you're in with some music. You can sing to it, you could dance with it, but we celebrating the beauty, the power of the people, of what gives us joy, of what keeps us going. We know what that is. Let's try this. El pan de cada día nos llena de alegría, papeles sí, migajas no. Sing that now. El pan de cada día nos llena de alegría, papeles sí, migajas no. Eso. El pan de cada día nos llena de alegría, papeles sí, migajas no. Cántalo. El pan de cada día nos llena de alegría, papeles sí, migajas no. I know that y'all hear it. I know that you feel it. Remember that it's also revolutionary to dance, to sing. That's what keeps us going. So if you out there hearing this, I want you to just move with it. Sing it loud. Fill up your kitchen. Fill up your living room with this energy right now. Like you made it, y'all. El pan de cada día nos llena de alegría, papeles sí, migajas no. El pan de cada día nos llena de alegría, papeles sí, migajas no. Con alegría. El pan de cada día nos llena de alegría, papeles sí, migajas no. Una vez más. All together, we're gonna do it real loud one more time. El pan de cada día nos llena de alegría, papeles sí, migajas no. Thank you so much for singing. Much love and respect to all my people out there. And like Catalina said, the Movimiento Cosecha inviting you all May 1st in DC. Love and respect. Pa'lante, pa'lante. Gracias a todos. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lou. And next, we're going to have Adriana Cadena with Rita, Reform Immigration for Texas Alliance. It's a project of the Border Network for Human Rights. Welcome, Adriana.
And in particular for being part of the Poor People's Campaign. I live in the beautiful binational city of El Paso, Texas. It's a city that prides itself in being a welcoming city, but it's also a city and a place like many of our along the border that is infiltrated by militarized agencies. On a daily basis, we face a heavy presence of Border Patrol, custom agents, military base, Fort Bliss, and not to mention our own local law enforcement. We have witnessed the abuse by these agencies in our community, and not only how they treat asylum seekers and people crossing the border at the bridge, but also in how they target poor border communities, where Border Patrol agents have even shot US citizens. That is right, many may not even realize that, such as Sergio Huereca back in 2010. And where Border Patrol agents unapologetically stop and harass people at the entrance of their home to ask them about their immigration status. The time has come where Border Patrol, ICE, and all of these DHS agencies must stop to act with impunity. When politicians talk about crisis at the border, the crisis is not the people who are seeking refuge. The crisis is the militarized agencies who have no accountability. That is why we, border communities, those of us who live on this every single day, call and demand for accountability, transparency, and oversight of Border Patrol, of ICE, and of all of these DHS agencies. We don't need any more boots on the ground. What we need is humanitarian relief. We need welcoming centers where children, women and men who are fleeing violence and instability in their home country can find refuge and can be quickly reunited with family members in the United States. Because we at the southern border are the new Ellis Island. We are a welcoming place for those who are seeking refuge. And as many of our folks who have already mentioned here, Cosecha and others, that we cannot forget the 11 million immigrants who have been waiting for years, 20, 30 years, to be able to realize that dream to become US citizens of this great country. Politicians of both parties have failed us. For years, they have told us to wait. For years, they have told us that there is no political will for immigration reform. They have told us that we have to approach this in piecemeal. They have told us that we have to wait over and over again. And they have told us that if we want immigration reform, if we want a pathway to citizenship, guess what? We need more troops, we need to have more enforcement at the border. Well, no more. This is not gonna work now. And we demand that we can no longer concede any more enforcement. We can no longer concede to wait. No, señor, no way. That is why today I am here joining all of you, and thank you for this beautiful opportunity in representation of the communities at the Border Network for Human Rights who have been organizing day in and day out for the last 20 years, and for our member organizations, Sarita, to say, like we like to say in Texas, ya basta, ya basta, no más. We are the 11 million, all of us, we are a representation of the 11 million, and we will not stop until we see the realization of fathers, of mothers, of women, of children, that we have a pathway to citizenship, and not just a pathway, but with full rights, for full integration into this country. Because we are the 11 million and we are fighting for justice, and we are fighting for that justice and the fulfillment of every human right that we have, because we deserve that, because we're all human and we are equal. Thank you.
That's right. Thank you so much, Adriana. Ya basta. We need to really organize. We have a lot of community members across this country doing the door-to-door work. This past election, we had a lot of immigrant communities going out and getting out the vote, because we understand the power that our community has, and we are pushing for what we deserve. So next up is Vivian Chang from Apala. Welcome, Vivian.
Thank you, Kenya. And good afternoon, everyone. My name is Vivian Chang. I am the Civic Engagement Manager at the Asian Pacific American Labor Alliance. We are the first and only national organization of Asian American and Pacific Islander workers. APALA is also a proud member of the Value Our Families campaign, which defends and strengthens the family immigration system to promote a system based on love, empathy, and justice. In the midst of rising anti-Asian violence, we must redouble our efforts to seek dignity, protection, and rights for all immigrants. Asian American workers are particularly impacted by failures in the immigration system, especially the low-wage Asian workers who are on the front lines of COVID, working in our hospitals, our food systems, and our schools. Many of us are eagerly waiting to reunite with our families after a year of COVID isolation, but millions of immigrants will still be separated from their own families. Parents who come to the US for work often have to leave their children behind for years because they're not able to sponsor them to come. Siblings, elder parents, aunts and uncles all remain separated for decades, and some never reunite before it's too late. Our immigration system has kept families apart for decades. The success of our country relies on the strength of immigrant families. We know that we must take a bold first step at reuniting families who have been divided by endless bureaucracy. It is imperative upon all of us to end the visa backlogs that keep families apart. We must urge Congress to end visa backlogs through the upcoming reconciliation process. Congress must pass the Reuniting Families Act once and for all, and we ask that all of you join us in this moral fight to help reunite families across the country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vivian, for the work that you're doing and for being in solidarity with us here today. So next, I want to introduce Reverend Leo out of Virginia. with the Virginia Poor People's Campaign and doing some powerful solidarity work in Virginia.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you all. It's an honor to be with every single one of you. I am Reverend Leonina, testifying today from occupied Pamunkey land on what now we call DC. When Trump first ran, I came out as undocumented and unafraid, and I received death threats, bounties placed upon my head, unjust police investigations for daring to say that no one is illegal on stolen lands. But I refused to fly under the radar, to suffer in silence and to stay in my place until I get my papers. Some folks in and out of movement want us, undocumented folks, to keep quiet about our experiences, and this will never serve us well. So today I bring you the voices that refuse to be silent, the voices that refuse to go unheard despite the efforts of the state through violence and oppression. I bring you the voice of Maria, who is fighting for her husband, Edwin, and his freedom. Edwin almost faced a hush deportation this year, even after Biden promised us 100 days of ceased deportations. If it weren't for Maria's efforts, grassroots leaders and politicos getting involved and halting this deportation, he would have been gone by now. And he would have left her a chronically ill woman with 3 children to take care of. I want to lift up the struggle of a dear anonymous friend whose brother-in-law was kidnapped in New York City by ICE and placed into a detention center or concentration camp on his way to work. His pregnant wife alone died in childbirth due to complications while he was in there. He has not seen his newborn child yet, nor has he been able to bury his wife. My friend now has to raise her own 3 children, plus 3 more children and a newborn. I bring you Wilmer's voice, who came here seeking freedom from violence, yet has seen a day outside of a correction center. He has been bounced around from state to state, starved, tortured, abused, and traumatized for years. I lift up Josh and his partner, Luis, who was kidnapped by ICE, posing as police during a regular traffic stop. Local law enforcement collaboration with ICE must end. The existence of these law enforcement agencies must be reevaluated altogether. Our LGBTQ family deserves to be living free from fear. The immigration policies that we have now need to reflect our communities, especially when it comes to LGBTQ folks receiving benefits from their partners. And solitary confinement for our trans siblings must end now. 500 years ago, borders did not exist. And today I want to lift up the Carrizo Comecrudo tribe of Texas and their chief Juan. Their lands is crossed by the border and the wall, and that wall sits directly upon their sacred burial sites. They are fighting ecological devastation from corporations that extract from sacred lands. And they constantly seek justice for the missing and murdered Indigenous women, children, and trans siblings that have been happening for over 500 years. Lastly, I want to leave you with joy and prophecy from my Indigenous Machacachique elder, Maria Chavalan Sut, whom many of you have met in many different occasions through the campaign. Maria just won her stay of removal. That means that she will be soon walking out of the sanctuary in Charlottesville, Virginia. And Maria and I talked this week and preparing for this. And Maria wants to bring all of you, every single one of you listening to us today. She wants to bring this dream to your attention. She dreamed that she was walking out of sanctuary a few months back with chains broken in her hands, and she places them upon our oppressors' feet and tell them, esto te pertenece a ti, this belongs to you. She wants you to know that the time for liberation is now. The time for liberation is now. See y'all on Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Reverend Leonina. I want to introduce Julissa from Milpa. Julissa Morales out of Pennsylvania. Welcome. Tomorrow, Mondays, we welcome you here.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. I'm here on behalf of MILPA. We are the Movement of Immigrant Leaders in Pennsylvania, a network of families that fight for the dignity and human rights of each family, regardless of immigration status. As said, my name is Julissa, and I have been a member since 2014, at just 12 years old. I began my work with MILPA because I strongly believe in our two priorities, a driver's license for all and an inclusive immigration reform system. My father was unable to fully provide for his family on wages in Mexico, which led to him immigrating to the United States. To this day, he still financially supports them, being the main provider for my grandma's house, on-site education at nursing school, and anything else that they ask for. My dad has had up to 3 jobs in order to provide for us all. With all his hard work, he has been able to accomplish one of his dreams and now owns a local restaurant in Harrisburg. My parents have not been able to see their family for over 20 years. I have never visited Mexico or been able to see firsthand and understand my own culture or meet any of my family there. My grandma, which I never got the chance to meet, passed due to COVID this past February, and instead of my father being able to properly grieve, he had to worry about financial issues. We are part of the Poor People's Campaign because our struggles are interconnected. We understand that the unjust distribution of wealth is the root of all of our problems, including the lack of legalization for the 11 million undocumented, lack of a driver's license, not having enough access to higher education, healthcare, dignified housing, dignified jobs and salary, or even a lack of access to portable water. They all come from the same root. It is until we understand that our fights are one and only one. United, we will win this fight. My parents are not farmers, TPS holders, or have DACA, but they still deserve a pathway to citizenship. We are not against any legislation, but we do firmly believe all humans deserve the right to mobility. We believe in immigration reform for all 11 million. If you support our efforts, please join us on our May 1st march in Washington, D.C. in support of an inclusive immigration system. For more information, you can call 717-536-8367. However, our fight goes beyond legislation. Our fight is for a moral agenda that will finally give us back our stolen dignity and rights. Justice delayed is justice denied, and we will no longer accept defeat because it's not an option. It's not for our families, communities, or our country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julissa. Indeed, justice delayed is justice denied, and so the power of MILPA rising up, connecting with people from all over the state of Pennsylvania, across the whole country and a whole world. I want to introduce our last speaker, Chris Larson from Equity and Education Coalition in Washington State. Christopher, it's so good to have you here.
No, thank you for having me. 11 million immigrants lack citizenship or pathway to citizenship. I'm amongst one of those 11 million. 46 years ago, I was evacuated as an orphan due to the U.S. occupation during the Vietnam War, and fortunately was adopted and raised by a loving U.S. family. My citizenship is in question due to a clerical error in 1988 that we were never notified about, and due to this clerical error by our own immigration system, I have an order of deportation to a country that I have no knowledge of, nor do I have any family connections. Every 6 months, I have a deportation check-in. Every year, I have to renew a work permit. Yes, I have to pay to work. Now, facing anti-Asian hate due to COVID-19 misinformation by the Trump administration, I am once again labeled a lazy gook. Yet, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, 63.4% of all foreign-born adults were employed, compared to 59.8% of U.S.-born adults. Yet again, I pay to work. I work an average of 72 hours per week, but still, I am called a lazy immigrant. Immigrants lacking citizenship were excluded from 3 different stimulus to help from the setbacks of unemployment, housing, childcare, medical care, and necessities due to COVID-19. Even US citizens that had a spouse that was a non-citizen could have been excluded. Our immigration system, which lacks transparency and oversight, does not value the family unit, nor does it encourage a just immigration. Our country was built on the backs of immigrants, and our immigration is built on old slave laws. Will we continue as a nation to stand for this injustice? No. We must all stand in unity to fight for equal rights for all humans. The walls of systematic and institutionalized racism must come crumbling down. I'd like to thank the Poor People's Campaign for fighting for all our immigrant communities and restoring dignity to all, but also thank for the carrying on for the legacy of the late Martin Luther King. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have heard from leaders in Homestead who are battling for-profit detention centers and the poisoning and caging of immigrant children. We've heard from leaders of the 11 million undocumented immigrants who are demanding justice, not crumbs. We've heard from tenants, low-wage workers, whole communities at our border who are organizing for power. We've heard the dream of families in sanctuary, of breaking chains and handing them to those who have oppressed people for too long, saying these belong to you. We've heard stories of immigrants who have been tortured and harassed because of the lack of driver's license or proper papers. We've heard from folks from Mexico to Yemen. We've heard from Asian Americans and Caribbean Americans. And the cry has been united. The message is that we demand rights, dignity, justice for absolutely all. I want to remind everybody that's gathered with us today of the 14 policy priorities of the Poor People's Campaign. Yes, we have a particular point on our agenda about just immigration policies. But we also have to include and demand that we include immigrants in just COVID relief, in quality health care, in raising the minimum wage for all workers, in counting poverty so that we have a better sense of who is hurting in this rich nation. We talk about the need to guarantee quality housing for absolutely everybody and building up investments in infrastructure, public institutions that make our communities whole and safe and free. We have to protect voting rights and civil rights, and we have to have a pathway, a just pathway to real immigration reform. We need a quality, equitable education. We need a fair taxation system. We have to protect and ensure the rights of all indigenous peoples, indigenous to the United States and to countries all over the world. And we need to end building a wall at that southern border. We have to demilitarize our border enforcement. We have to repeal detention and deportation and child detention and family separation. We have to reunite families. And we have to have regular, timely access, legal documentation, legal residency. We have to make immigrants eligible for all social programs and welfare programs. And we need those to pay everybody enough to actually thrive, not just barely survive. These and so much more are demands. So I want to pass it over to Kenya Alcocer, who's going to close it for us today with our call to action. I thank everybody for joining us, and I know that we are working indeed together, and we're not going to take one step back. Kenya.
Thank you so much. And yes, we're saying The people united will never be defeated. And that is why today we're calling to action. Please look at the link on the screen. Call your senator. Let them know that we need them to end this Jim Crow filibuster. We need to pass an immigration reform, a comprehensive immigration reform that doesn't criminalize our communities, that opens the door to everybody to have the right to live. We are making sure that everybody in this country has access to everything that they need, not just to survive, but to thrive. And that is why the Poor People's Campaign is such a powerful movement, because we're a movement of fusion. We're a movement that we don't allow any lines of division to divide us. We are united now more than ever. And come June 2021 and June 2022, they're going to see the power of this campaign. So push that link and join us in this cause.
Great, great. Thank you, Reverend Liz and Kenya, for taking us through this today. We're so thrilled to have Kenya join Pam McMichael and Roz Pellis as a tri-chair of our National Coordinating Committee, and the leadership that she has provided and will continue to provide. The speakers today, the testifiers, have been overwhelming in their power and in their clarity of call. We do encourage you to go and call your senators right now, knowing that we need to get rid of this filibuster if we're going to pass the types of legislations we need to make everyone, give everyone the rights and the resources they need. So please go to the link that's on the page, and also follow all these groups that have spoken today. Please come out on May 1st. It's incredibly appropriate and powerful to end our Moral Mondays during the first 100 days with immigration and immigrant rights, the control of bodies, and as all our markets have liberalized the movement of money and products and capital, the continued control of people's bodies and movement is at the center of the racist economic system that we are all suffering underneath. And so to look at immigration as and the control that's happening there in the context of the history of the building of this nation, that has been at the crux of creating the structure that we're fighting right now is so powerful. This is our 13th Moral Monday, and Saturday in Washington, D.C. will mark the end of the 100 days. On Friday, we will broadcast a recap for the past 13 weeks where we've gone from fighting for healthcare and $15 an hour and ecological justice and environmental justice, on to Memphis and into Mississippi and all over the country. And so I think, history will tell us that we didn't, twiddle our thumbs during the first 100 days of the Biden administration and this Congress, that we weren't satisfied just with an election, that a movement doesn't end on election day, but that we have to keep fighting no matter what. And just so proud of all the teams that have made that possible, and that have built us up into a way that we can now move into the next period of organizing and fighting that we know we need to do in order to build the nation and the communities that we need. So I want to thank, there's so many people behind the scenes that make this happen, our ASL interpreters who have been with us every week. For this week, we have Aaron, Sandra Simone, Christopher Morton, Monica Gallego, Carolyn Boykins, our captioner, Denise as well. All of our comms team led by Martha Wagner and Lamonique Hamilton, who have behind the scenes put it all together. We've learned a ton about broadcasting and social media that frankly I'd rather not know, really, but we know it now. We're not going to forget it as we build towards the future. So James, Steve, Leanne, Nick, Yolanda, and everyone who's done that, we're so appreciative, and the whole team that has made this. This is a great group, and just the honor of a lifetime, and a great joy to be a part of it. And we're just excited to continue to build on these relationships that stronger together. Dr. King said injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Well, I think the inverse is true too, that justice anywhere is a threat to injustice everywhere. And that's what we've seen in these Moral Mondays as we focused on topics that fighting for justice everywhere is going to build it for all of us, and that there's not a scarcity of justice in this world. So thank you all. We're going to close out with a Everybody's Got a Right to Live, except in Spanish. And we look forward to seeing you. More dates will be coming out. Of course, June 21, 2021 will be our mass Poor Peoples and Low-Wage Workers Assembly online this summer. They'll be building for a year from now on June 18th, 2022, when we will be coming back to DC with our mass assembly and moral march on Washington. And so farewell and thank you so much. Peace.
Sin piedad alcancemos libertad, marchando hacia un nuevo porvenir. El derecho de vivir, vivir. No podemos permitir atropellos sin piedad, alcancemos libertad, marchando hacia un nuevo porvenir. Sin piedad alcancemos libertad, marchando hacia un nuevo porvenir. El derecho de vivir, vivir. No podemos permitir atropellos sin piedad, alcancemos libertad, marchando hacia un nuevo porvenir.